I am in the neighborhood where Barry and Honey Sherman used to reside. It is known as the York Mills neighborhood, and it is a very rich neighborhood in the north part of Toronto. And I will be walking to what used to be known as 50 Old Colony Road, and the address has since been changed due to the stigma of their deaths at that property. It is now known as 48 Old Colony Road. And I will be taking the residential streets to this property. And I will be telling you about the sequence of events that occurred on the day of their murders. And it is still a cold case in Toronto. They were murdered back on December 13th, 2017, which is about 7 years ago. And the weather was very similar to what I'm experiencing this evening. And there was a lot of activity happening on the property at 50 Old Colony Road on December 13th. The Shermans had their mansion up for sale. It was selling for $6.9 million. And there was an offer on the table, but it was $1 million less than what they were wanting, or Barry Sherman was wanting. So they were still waiting for a better offer. And Barry and Honey Sherman were billionaires. At the time of their deaths, Barry Sherman was worth, in estimates, about $10 billion. He was a very intelligent man, and he started the pharmaceutical giant known as Apotex in Toronto. On the day of their murders, there was a lot of people in the house for the opening and the showing of the home, such that they could sell it. On that morning of December 13th, there were two painters, their real estate agent, and one of their trainers who was also a friend of the Shermans. And at 8:30 in the morning, Barry had scheduled a workout with his personal trainer. And so from 8:30 in the morning until 9:30, he was working out with his trainer. At 9:30 in the morning, it was Honey Sherman's appointment with the personal trainer. And when she began her exercise routine, Barry Sherman had stopped in where she was working out and showed her that he was wearing one of the Canadian Tire belts that she had purchased for him on a discount rack. And he had not worn that at all, and she had gifted that to him over a month earlier. And the reason I mention that is when his body was found in the pool room in their mansion, the Canadian Tire belt was wrapped around his neck. So Honey Sherman at 9:30 began her exercise routine, and Barry Sherman headed off to Apotex. And Barry Sherman was a workaholic. And this neighborhood that I'm walking through is ultra rich. So Honey Sherman ended up doing her exercise with her personal trainer and friend for 2 hours. And then at 11:30 in the morning, she had a 2-hour appointment with a masseuse for a massage. Honey Sherman then gave her assistant some time off so she could celebrate the holidays with her family. And I am walking on the road on this route because there are no sidewalks. And the snow is coming down on me here in the city. So after she gave her assistant some time off for her holiday, she then proceeded to go shopping. So she then went to the Bay and Baby Gap and purchased some gifts. Barry Sherman's day was going as it generally went. He had a number of meetings at Apotex with a number of clients. But at 5 o'clock that evening, 3 builders were to meet him and Honey Sherman at Apotex to discuss building their new home, as to why the 50 Old Colony property was for sale. And their new home was going to be in Forest Hill, close to one of their daughters. It would have cost them $30 million. So that evening, 3 builders were to meet them and to discuss the building of the property. At about 6:15, the meeting finished at Apotex, and Honey Sherman got in her Lexus SUV to head home. At about 6:21, she made a phone call to a friend in her car, and her friend said that she sounded normal. She was just asking about her friend's husband's operation. And so after that phone call, Honey Sherman then proceeded to go to Bayview Village Mall, where she was observed using a bank machine. And after that, she drove home. I've now arrived at Old Colony Road. So after Honey Sherman went to the bank, she arrived back at her home at 50 Old Colony Road, and she parked her Lexus SUV on the right side of the driveway because Barry Sherman generally parked his Ford Mustang in the underground garage or on the left side of the circular driveway. Initially, the police had said that she was attacked getting out of her vehicle, but this year new evidence came to light based on the investigative and superb skills of Kevin Donovan from the Toronto Star. That in fact, she was attacked inside her home because the two gifts that she had bought earlier for her new granddaughter, the bags were sitting on the kitchen table neatly. So there was a Bay bag and a Baby Gap bag sitting on the table, and her purse was neatly placed on a chair. Her wallet was also on the table, and inside police found $7,500 in cash. And that's when she was attacked. They also found her phone in the bathroom on the floor, and they figure she dropped the phone when she was trying to escape from the perpetrators or perpetrator. The murder was quite horrific for her, and her death was quite horrific. That evening, Barry Sherman told one of the builders that he had to get home early, and generally he didn't leave the office early until about 10 at night. But that evening he said he had to be home early, and the builder said he didn't quite remember the reason that Barry Sherman said he had to leave early. At about 8:30 that evening, Barry Sherman sent out a work email and headed home. At about 9 o'clock that evening, these homes are massive, and as you can see, there is nobody on this street. I'm literally the only one walking here, and the weather and I guess the foot traffic would have been similar on the night that they were murdered. So my impression is the perpetrator or perpetrators would have had really no witnesses outside of any CCTV cameras that these residents have attached to their homes. And this home here is the neighbor of 48 Old Colony Road, which I am coming up on right now, and it is still an abandoned site. As far as I know, the property, 48 Old Colony Road, is still for sale. And there are no buyers as far as I've read. because of the stigma of their murders. At 9 o'clock, this residence here is across the street from the Shermans. And if somebody was staking out this house prior to their murders, it would be very obvious a car being parked here, because obviously these driveways are huge, such that no one needs to really park on the street. And if you're not aware of the Honey and Barry Sherman murder cold case, the police, their investigation of it was shabby at best. And thanks to Kevin Donovan from the Toronto Star, the Toronto police had to come out and, rather than suggest it was a murder-suicide, had to do another investigation such that they deemed their deaths a double homicide. And that is the property right there. At 9 o'clock, Barry Sherman arrived at home, pulled into the driveway on the left-hand side. And when he pulled into the driveway, he took his real estate papers for the house inspection for the property they were selling here. His BlackBerry and his driver's leather gloves. He then entered the garage, and there is a hallway, and then proceeded into the house. But upon entry into the garage to the hallway, he also was attacked. There's another residence across the street here. And his BlackBerry papers and gloves were found by the real estate agent on the Friday morning, December 15th, when it was discovered that they were both hanging in the pool room of their home. And this street is very quiet right now. So I can see how someone could have come in and out without being noticed. But if they were sitting in a car outside of this residence, and there is evidence to suggest that somebody was staking out the property prior to their murders, it would be quite apparent. And it does appear as though there is a new building here, a new home on the site. And when I was here last time, I don't recall there being a home beside 48 Old Colony Road. This here is 46 Old Colony Road. And beside it is 48 Old Colony Road, where they were murdered. And I am getting the heebie-jeebies. So there is a lock on the door here, some fencing, and some nails sticking out of the wood. They definitely do not want you on this property. And it is under 24-hour video surveillance. There is a poster here of someone who is selling this property. So it is still for sale. And not surprised by that at all. So on December 15th, both Barry and Honey Sherman were found murdered in their swimming pool room at the furthest side of the room. And that is the events on the day they were murdered, and it is still a cold case in the city of Toronto.